Okay, so imagine this, right? Like
Yeah.
everything we depend on, our food, our medicine,
Yeah.
even just the fertilizers that help grow our crops,
Right.
suddenly gone, just not available.
Yeah,
Kind of scary to think about.
definitely.
But that's exactly the scenario that this Project Tumbuh wants us to
Right.
kind of face head on.
Right.
And I think it's going to be a really fascinating deep dive into how we might have to adapt and survive
Yeah.
in a world where global trade as we know it,
It's
doesn't exist.
I mean, I think it forces us to rethink, our dependence on these really intricate global networks that we've built up. We don't often realize just how vulnerable we are to even just like minor disruptions, whether it's a, natural disaster, political conflict. I mean, even a major cyber attack like the one Project Tumbuh uses as its starting point.
Yeah, it definitely makes you realize how fragile our systems truly are.
Absolutely.
So how does Project Tumbuh envision communities responding to this kind of thing?
That's a great question. It's really interesting. It actually draws inspiration from a time before globalization and globalized trade. It looks back at traditional knowledge and craft as potential models for self-sufficiency. Communities used to be much more adept at utilizing local resources, skills to meet their own needs. And Project Tumbuh kind of wants to reimagine these practices, but for a modern context.
So it's not just about like going back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
It's about finding ways to adapt
age-old
wisdom to today's challenges.
Exactly.
Can you give me a concrete example of what this looks like in Project Tumbuh?
Sure. So the centerpiece of the project is this decentralized chemical production unit.
Okay.
And it's designed to manufacture essential things like fertilizers and medicines using just locally sourced materials.
Okay.
And the designer, Alif Rahman, really goes deep into the science behind this, researching and optimizing chemical processes to make them as efficient and sustainable as possible.
I'm really intrigued by these optimized chemical processes.
Yeah.
It sounds like Alif Rahman is bringing together cutting-edge science with traditional practices.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of how this might actually work?
Absolutely. So one of the innovations that Alif Rahman proposes is a method for extracting nitrogen from the air to create fertilizer. And this is a process that, typically requires like large-scale industrial production.
Right.
But they've actually found ways to kind of make it achievable at a community level.
Wow.
Which is super interesting, reducing dependence on those external suppliers.
That's incredible. It seems like a huge undertaking.
It is.
To design something like this.
Right.
What can you tell me about Alif Rahman's process and how they approach this challenge?
You can tell that they've done their homework.
Yeah.
They not only delve deep into like the chemistry involved, but they also built these complex system models to simulate how these processes would work within a community, factoring in things like resource availability and economic viability.
So it's not just about the science.
No.
It's also about ensuring that these solutions are practical and can actually be implemented by communities.
Yeah.
What about the visual aspects of the project?
Yeah.
What does this production unit actually look like?
So Project Tumbuh actually includes some visuals that depict the production unit. And you see things like ceramic bioreactor vessels, which are really interesting because ceramic is a really readily available material in many parts of the world. And there's a solar-powered distillation unit, which emphasizes, that sustainable, low-tech approach that they're going for.
It sounds like Alif Rahman has really thought this through from the science to the implementation.
Absolutely.
And even the aesthetics.
It's very thorough.
Project Tumbuh definitely challenges us to think differently about how we might build resilience in the face of global disruptions.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that local production and self-sufficiency could be more important than ever in the future.
Absolutely. And it raises some important questions like, could this type of approach, even on a smaller scale, help us become less reliant on these global supply chains in our everyday lives? Could it even be a model for a more sustainable future in general?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering.
For sure.
Well, that's our deep dive into Project Tumbuh for today.
Fascinating stuff.
Thank you for joining us on Exploring Futures.
Thanks for having me.
And if you found this conversation as thought-provoking as we did,
be
sure to share it with others who might be interested in exploring these important questions about our